Welcome to Leading for Life Stories Season 4. I'm Bob Judson. I'm the host for this podcast, and thank you very, very much indeed for joining me. Whether you're a new joiner or a seasoned listener, then I really hope you enjoy the mix of content that we provide. The personal stories, the thematic episodes, and of course, the fantastic guest interviews. If you've been with me since the beginning, then I'm enormously grateful for your loyalty and thank you so much. If you're relatively new to the show, then I really hope you like it, and I hope you find all of it interesting and some of it hopefully useful to you. Please subscribe on whichever channel it is you're using, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast platform. That really helps us boost the show and get it over the hills on the algorithms. So if you can do that for me, I would be enormously grateful. But without further ado, let's go. Welcome back, everybody. I thought this week I'd do another personal story and kind of bring you up to date, I suppose, with where I am. I talked previously about building a business and the challenges that went with that on the last one. But I've never really talked in great detail, although I've alluded to it a lot on some of my other episodes about what I do now. And it never hurts to advertise, so I thought actually giving you a perspective of what I do now is useful. And with that in mind, I mean, obviously, if anything I say here sparks a bit of interest and you think, actually that'd be really useful to you, then please do get in touch, because I'm always looking for potential new clients, and I do this stuff for a living. So I would be absolutely delighted to hear from you if if it resonates. But even if it doesn't, and from a business point of view, you're kind of not looking for this kind of thing, then I think maybe some of my journey might be of at least interest to you. So here goes. So having set the business up in 2019 and moved on from Deloitte, initially, obviously, my focus was very much on still contracting back to Deloitte, working with them. I think I've mentioned previously that was what got me into doing the work at Deloitte University. And that's kind of grown from there. And I've moved in the last 7 years into a space where I do less consulting work and more training and leadership development work. Now, that's not to say I turn down consulting work. If there's work that comes up that looks relevant and interesting and plays to my skill set, then of course I'm always delighted to have that conversation. But I do think that my emphasis now is it needs to be clear. It's important to make it clear and be, sort of shaped in terms of what you're actually doing. And so there's 3 strands to what I do now, which are based around speaking, professional speaking, and training in workshop kind of settings, and coaching. So I'm going to talk about each of those in a little bit more detail and just give you a flavor of where I'm coming from, because again, I think I'm doing something now that plays to my strengths, because it's playing to the skill set that I've built over the last 45 years and drawing on all of that experience. And I'm kind of conscious that my purpose in life, if you like, is defined now by giving back a bit with what I've done. Obviously, I'm still in for making a living here. That's firmly what I'm trying to do with it. I'm not doing it entirely altruistically, but I absolutely think that I've got lots of good experience and useful experience that I want to share, that I want to try and help people who are in leadership roles and or aspirants to leadership roles to pick up tips, tools, techniques, ideas, basically thoughts, experiences, good and bad. And often I think there is as much to be gained from the bad stories, the difficult stories where things have gone wrong, as there is from stuff that's gone well. So that's the emphasis. If you saw the piece that I recently had in Your Business with James Caan, I shared it on LinkedIn as well. I did a big double-page spread in there where I talked about these 3 different strands, because I think they are quite complementary in terms of what I'm trying to do. I firmly believe that the speaking piece gets to a bigger audience. It gets there quicker. It doesn't take so much time from a client point of view in terms of putting their people in somewhere for an entire day or half a day of workshop. They can be there for an hour and actually get a lot of value from what potentially is being given to them. And then obviously the workshop piece is the more deeper dive if you want to go down that route. And if you want to be more individual about it, then that's where the coaching piece comes in. And for me, they feel very complementary as well, in terms of they are all leveraging my skills and experience at different levels. So I love speaking. I thoroughly enjoy it. I really enjoy being on stages, whether they're big or small, and talking to an audience, and ideally taking some questions and answers as well. I very much, when I speak these days, it is focused around my own story. And if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you'll have heard a lot of those things in the personal stories episodes. And I leverage all of that obviously depending on the time available, in a format that is bringing the experiences to life and the relevance of what I'm saying to life through the storytelling element. And I think that's such a powerful medium to get stuff across that is going to hopefully help, hopefully change some minds, hopefully make people think a bit differently at the end of the session. That's the aim, that's the intention. And whether you're doing it for entertainment, which sometimes is the case, you're turning up to talk at an event, post a dinner or something like that, then actually it can be a bit more entertaining, and I can certainly do that. I can leverage plenty of flying stories, and particularly things like flying the Typhoon or flying the Battle of Britain Memorial flight. There are absolutely reams of things that it's very easy to pick up on, and everyone knows that fighter pilots love talking about themselves, and that's definitely the case with me in terms of talking about flying. So I do thoroughly enjoy that. I find it very rewarding to do it as well. But I also very much like to try and leverage it in a leadership development context. So I use my own story and my sort of keynote, I suppose, of choice is called Soaring Beyond Limits, and very much is leveraging my background when I obviously had a bit of a challenging start. Single mum, bringing me up because my dad had died, going to boarding school from the age of 11 through to 18 in a pretty tough environment in the school at the time. But that set me up hugely for success, and then the journey into and through the Air Force, and that was fraught. Initially my own flying training, fraught with difficulty. Nearly failed many times going through flying training, but ultimately penny dropped, it all clicked, and the rest is kind of history. In that I obviously went on through the service all the way up to the 2-star level as an Air Vice Marshal by the time I left, and so it was lovely that I've got those kind of stories to talk about. And in between times, I did some amazing things. Commanding RAF Coningsby when we brought Typhoon into service, talking about the Battle of Britain Memorial flight that I flew with there, talking about the introduction of the Typhoon, a myriad of Jaguar stories from all my time on the Jaguar, 2,500 hours flying operationally over Iraq, flying operationally over Bosnia, doing all of the things that go with command in various guises, learning all those leadership roles. Exchange tour with the German Air Force, fascinating time. I was there when reunification was happening, so back end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall literally coming down a couple of months after I arrived in the job, which was extraordinary, really. And actually, the flying training journey itself, the stories that went with that, the challenges that went with that, the opportunities that came from it, and the way that progressed were great. And of course, beyond the station command, almost into the last major chapter of my career, in the last couple of ranks I was there, time out in the Pentagon, time again at a fascinating time where obviously there was the Arab Spring and the Libya campaign that was going on while I was there. Coming back from that into Assistant Chief of Defence Staff Ops and doing all the work I did with the Olympics and the challenges that went on around the Olympics, plus obviously other aspects to that job too, and then into my very last job and my whole transition story and getting out and setting up with Deloitte, and then subsequently setting up my own business. So in terms of a span of stuff to talk about when I do any of the different things I do, then I'm not short of material to go with it. And I think based on experience and feedback, it lands really well with the audience, which is great. And I love doing it, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And particularly when, as I say, I've got the chance to do some Q&A with it as well, and hopefully give people a chance to go a bit deeper than perhaps you go in the initial speech. So that's the big thing that I do. Point one, is try and get out there with a keynote. And I'm very clear that actually, if you're not really decided what you want from someone who's doing the leadership training kind of business, then a keynote's a good place to start, because actually it gives you an idea what I'm all about. It gives you an idea whether you think I've got the right style that's going to work with your company and going to enable you to go deeper. So that's why I do it. I'm really trying to build that part of the business out a little bit, because I've probably been a bit lighter touch on that than I should have been over the last few years, and that's partly my own fault, partly because I just thought I wasn't quite ready to do that, I suppose. But, as I look at it now, I think I really am ready to do that. The workshops thing is the next part of that process, and very much, what I do with Deloitte University is a classic, or with KWC Global, where I'm often delivering their material, pretty much invariably delivering their material to enthusiastic groups of participants. And obviously, it's really, really great to work with enthusiastic, happy people, but you have to be able to deal with the challenging ones as well. And I've had plenty of those along the way. So again, I think when I look at my overall story and my experience, even if I'm delivering someone else's material, bringing that to life with the right kind of storytelling, the right kind of emphasis, the right kind of examples, and the sort of lived experience of leadership. And there's a lot of people who talk academically about leadership, and in some instances they've written books about it and all the rest of it. But actually, you then go, well, what have you actually led? The answer might be not very much, or indeed some cases nothing at all. So the theory's great, and I'm not decrying the theory, I'm not decrying the importance of it, but I do think the practical lived experience of being in command, in senior positions where you are dealing with challenging situations. Now, in the military, obviously, that's easy to generate. Challenging, literally very challenging, under fire in some instances, all those sorts of things. And I'm not trying to contrast and compare that with the commercial world, but I think there are absolute parallels that are easy to bring out. I always, when I do workshop type stuff, it's definitely not death by PowerPoint. I mean, I'm very much into using multiple types of visual aids, very interactive with the group, because I think the other thing you've got to take into account with this kind of work is if you're dealing, as I often am in that kind of training world, with people who are probably mid-career. So anywhere, and if you're looking at an age span, anywhere between 28 to 45 would be a very typical grouping where I sort of do my workshop type deliveries. And if you're working in that kind of audience, then of course they've got a lot of knowledge themselves. So it's unlocking that knowledge, tapping to their knowledge, their focus areas, their areas of expertise, sharing. Problem shared is a problem halved. Great old expression, but very, very true. And I think part of that on courses is very useful. People realize that actually, do you know what? I'm not the only one with this. I'm not the only one thinking like that. There are others who've got this kind of problem, and unlocking that, exposing that, and then finding a kind of coping strategy that helps, and going through that is definitely something that I think is valuable in the workshop training, and again, very much something that I try to put firmly down. A bit like the keynote speaking, though, it's not a fixed thing. I'm not going in saying this is what I do, take it or leave it. Absolutely not. The conversation is always about, what do you want? What does the client want? What does the client need? And then can I deliver that? If I can't deliver it, I'll be honest and say I can't deliver it, and suggest somebody else. But if I can deliver it, and obviously a lot of the time I can, then I'm very much into either leveraging, if it's their material and they want me to leverage that, or designing programs for them, and I absolutely do that as well. So if there's a need to build a program, then of course I'll do that. And whether that's single day, multiple day, whatever it happens to be, that's the conversation that happens in terms of how to move it forward. So that's strand two of what I do. Strand three is the coaching piece. Qualified coach, personal performance coach, qualified neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, and member of the International Coaching Federation, etc. So I've got the badges to go with doing this. And I, in the coaching space, most enjoy working with more senior people, where they are either in or around the C-suite kind of, or board level players, or very senior in whatever organization it is. So senior in education and public services, etc. I've had all those kind of people in as coaching clients. And the coaching conversation is a mixture of things. It can be pure coaching, proper coaching. So you're actually accelerating someone's thinking by Socratic questioning and challenging them and pushing them to develop their own ideas and think through where they're going to get to the goal they've set themselves, and find some steps along the way to get there. Or it can be a blend of that and a bit of mentoring and a bit of kind of advice. And most often, particularly with some of those senior audiences, it's a bit of sounding board as well. It's giving the client the opportunity to challenge back and throw some stuff back and just basically vent a little bit in an environment where they wouldn't ordinarily be able to do that. So because they probably can't do it in front of their peer group and and the team they're working with, et cetera, et cetera. So the coaching environment, one-to-one, often online, can be face-to-face, but more often than not these days online, is a great way to do that because it gives you that safe space. Once you built the kind of right rapport with the client, then actually it's all about, can I actually help you to get to where you need to be? And that's taken all sorts of different forms. I've helped people prepare for interviews, for big jobs changes that they're moving into. I've helped people who are thinking about transitioning between one industry to another, one business to another. Transitioning out of the military would be a good example. Although, interestingly, often I prefer to not coach military people because the risk is it strays too closely into mentoring. Because obviously I've got so much military experience, and in many ways it's nice to work with people who have a totally different experience and a totally different background, because that's really, really helpful for me in terms of giving the best I can as a coach, but hopefully for the client as well, because you're not coming in with some preconceived ideas and some preconceived thoughts. You're bringing a completely fresh angle and a fresh set of challenges to the table. So those three strands: the keynote speaking piece, professional speaking piece, the workshop kind of training piece, which is not just individual, half day, multi-day, whatever it can be. It can be long programs, short programs, whatever's needed, or coaching as the third one, are all really kind of helpful in terms of driving forward an organization and an individual within an organization sometimes who is not necessarily stuck, but just needs some oil to further grease the wheels a little bit to make the machinery work really quickly and as efficiently as it can. So often with leadership, what I find when I deal with organizations is people have been promoted into a position where they're now running teams of people and they're building teams of people, and no one's ever given them any proper training or advice or ideas and tips and techniques to be able to do that, because it's just not the way the corporate world works. By and large, the corporate world will always work on, we're hiring you for your qualifications and experience, we're training you to do what we want you to do in the job, and we're promoting you based on the performance of that. So if you're in sales or you're in marketing, then you're going to get promoted based on your sales credits and results or your marketing performance. No one's going to then turn around and say, right, we need to give you a load more leadership training, or very rarely will they do that. There are organizations that do, but it's often the case that it's something that's just kind of assumed and left there with a bit of osmosis and watch what others have done and off you go, which has its place because there are some very good leaders who've got there because of exactly that, and they've managed to do really well. But boy, does it help, I think, if you actually give people a few helping hands along the way. And that's predominantly what I try and do. So that's really all I wanted to say this week. I think I didn't want it to be too much of an advert, but I think it's kind of bringing this set of personal stories to a conclusion, because I've been, although I amused myself by looking back at what I'd done in previous episodes, saying I wasn't going to do a chronological view of my career, and that's pretty much exactly what I've done. But I've taken you through that whole journey from the Air Force, through all the time in the Air Force, the exit to Deloitte, and then the exit from Deloitte to doing what I do now. And this is kind of that capstone on the very top of that, to give you a real flavor of what it is that I kind of do. And I suppose to an extent, why should I be doing it? Why me? Why should I be the one that's going to offer you training, speaking, whatever it happens to be? Well, take a look at my background, see what you think. Because I've got plenty of stuff that I can give, plenty of opportunities to help. So if that is something that is of interest to you, absolutely do get in touch. I don't want this to put you off the podcast, that's for sure, because I'll be back with some great guests very soon. I've got stuff lined up for that, and the next guest in particular is going to be a really good one. And so I'm really keen to see you again very soon. And thanks very much indeed for listening. All the very best. Bye now. I hope this short episode's been useful to you and gives you a kind of flavor of what I'm doing. As I say, I didn't want to make it a kind of too much of an advert, or that possibly comes across a bit like that. And if I can help people, I certainly will. But that's my aim in life, really, is to kind of give back and help and be supportive and shift the dial for people who are finding quite often this leadership stuff quite challenging. If you did like it and you think other people would benefit from it, then please think about the whole, liking, supporting, forwarding, reposting, commenting, whatever it happens to be, or send me some direct feedback. And obviously, as ever, if you think it's valuable enough that it's worthy of a bit of financial reward, then please throw that my way via the www.patreon.com. Support the show. Link in your podcast will work just as well to take you there, and you can become a supporter, champion, or a patron of the show, which would be hugely appreciated by me if you're up for that. But I'm glad you're here. I'm always glad to have you watching or listening. So thank you very much indeed. Back again very soon. I look forward to it. Take care. Bye now.